All right, John Sterling here. Listen, I help salespeople get started fast. I've got a podcast for you here today called Noob School, where we interview crazy good salespeople, outstanding VPs of sales, and business owners who are all successful and started in sales. We're going to drill back to when they were just getting going. We're going to learn about some of the smart things that they've done to help them crush it, and also some of the things that slowed them down. We're going to publish this podcast every Friday morning so you can get some juicy weekly tidbits. It's going to help make you better and better every week. So we'll help your sales career get launched like a rocket ship. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and believe it or not, TikTok. No dancing, I promise. There may be some dancing. SalesTrainingForNoobs.com is the website. Enjoy the Noob School. All right, so one of the questions we got through our question and answer portal for the Noob School is kind of how to be more interesting, right? If I'm more interesting, it'll be easier to sell. People will want to talk to me more, want to be around me more, have a richer life if I'm more interesting. I think all that's true, right? I think the more of a kind of a life experience, skill stack you have, the more interesting you're going to be, the more people will want to be around you. You can attract more interesting people in your life. So how do you do that, right? So I just wrote down a few things that I'd noticed in my life and in lives of interesting friends of mine that they've done on purpose, and they've become more interesting. Okay, these are things that you can do, and you can be more interesting. Now, before I get started, don't get carried away with the all or nothing rule. Okay, like you say, I want to play an instrument only if I can be as good as John Coltrane, right? Or Miles Davis, or one of the great musicians. No, we're not going to be that good. But you can be pretty darn good. You can get pretty good in all this stuff. And pretty good's all you need to be in terms of the interesting scale, right? When someone says, hey, he speaks Spanish, they don't say, well, he speaks a level 4 Spanish or a level 8 Spanish or a level 10 Spanish. He speaks Spanish or he doesn't speak Spanish. So don't get carried away with all or nothing. Just get pretty good at it and just keep getting a little bit better every week. So the first thing I will suggest, if you want to be more interesting, is to learn a second language, at least a second language, maybe a third. I have yet to meet an American who spoke another language who wasn't interesting and also who wasn't successful. Not one. So if they just decided on their own to learn a second language, every single one of them is a successful person and they're kind of interesting. And usually it means they've spent some time in that country and done some traveling over there. And that, of course, makes them interesting also. So, learn another language, and I think it does something to your brain. You think a little bit differently. You see the world as a smaller place when you start to visit some of these other countries where you're going to learn the language. You get to open up your world to who you're going to meet. So if you speak French and you go to France or you go to parts of Canada, maybe a few other places in the world, you can converse and get to know and meet new friends that just speak that language, or primarily speak that language. So speak another language, and it's never been easier. There's apps on your phone. Some of them are almost free or darn near free. All kind of ways you can do it. Used to be very difficult. You had to take courses and sit in class, and now you can do it at your own pace. And I think the best one that I've heard of is called Duolingo. So check that one out, but there's several. So learn a second language. Second one, this is another one where people will give you a lot of credit for being interesting, but many people will not do it because they kind of go all or nothing. And it's playing an instrument. I play an instrument. Yeah, I love playing the saxophone. I've worked at it a long time, and I enjoy what I do with it. I'm never going to be as good as John Coltrane, but I'm doing what I'm doing. And people will say, man, I wish I could play the saxophone, or I wish I'd have kept up with my piano, or I wish I'd have kept up with my guitar, or I'd love to play the guitar. And normally I'll just let it go. But sometimes I'll say, well, doggone, I mean, if you really want to do it, why don't you do it? They'll say, well, I don't have time, or it's been too long, and you start making excuses for why they're not going to do it. But I'm telling you right now, if you've never played a lick of anything, you could pick up a ukulele for $100 or less and go online. A teacher would be better, but you can go online and get lessons, and you can learn how to play that uke well enough in a matter of weeks that you can play 50, 60, 100 songs. You just learn a few chords, a few, placements with your fingers, and you're just playing. The ukulele is only 4 strings, a very simple instrument to play. So you could pull that thing out in an airport lobby or in front of a fire and just, learn 10 or 15 songs you know how to do. And believe me, you'd be more interesting than not playing an instrument. So I don't want excuses. Pick up a uke. The next one is travel. And I'm not gonna pretend like, that everyone can just pick up and just go around the world, okay? But some of you can, and some of you can plan a trip for next year, where you might be gone 2 or 3 weeks, or even a month, or who knows? I don't know your schedule, your life, but most people have more chances to travel than they think, and there's not much that will make you more interesting than being that person, that just spent 6 months in Greece, or 3 months in France, or 2 months in Australia. These days, a lot of jobs you can work remote, and so we're just talking about a plane ticket and an Airbnb or someplace to stay. Particularly if you're going for a longer period of time, maybe you don't have to pay for anything back here, but it will make you more interesting. You'll learn more about the world. You'll make new friends. So I highly recommend, particularly since many of you can work remote, pick some spots in the world. Maybe it's the place where you're learning the language too, and just move. Go somewhere else for a while, no big deal. Go to France. Another one that'll make you more interesting, and I've got some other videos on this that go into more detail, but just to get into great shape. And I don't mean, Olympic shape, okay? I'm not going to get in Olympic shape either, but just whatever your body's supposed to be, get in that shape. Take the time to do it, and it will make you, it'll make all parts of your life more interesting. You'll be more able to make some of these things happen. So trust me, I would get in the great shape first before doing anything else. It'll make you more interesting. Another way to get more interesting is to adopt a nonprofit. So pick something that's near and dear to your heart, and just give it some time. Volunteer to work for this nonprofit to help them raise money or put on races or whatever it is they do. I do. My son was in the service, and so I do some nonprofits related to service folks and special forces folks, and we do a big event here once a year and do some have the SEALs kind of come in and do some shooting and teach all us businessmen how to shoot stuff and machine guns, and it's really cool. I mean, I really like it. It probably makes me more interesting, but I don't do it for that reason. I just enjoy, what we're trying to do for these nonprofit people, or for these special forces people. But that's another thing you can do is just pick one, and you will meet new people that are involved with the nonprofit, and it'll be another kind of feather in your cap that makes you different than just somebody who just, let's just say does the bare basics of life. You've got a job, go to church on Sunday, pull for a football team, I mean, I'm talking bare bones basics. We got to improve on that. Another thing you can do to be more interesting is take courses. And, some of the smartest people I know are taking a course all the time. So that doesn't mean they're taking 2 courses. It just means they're taking one course all the time. And it could be a course on whatever. It could be a course on language. It could be a course on music. It could be a course on a geography they're going to move to. It could be on their business structure, accounting. It could be anything. But they're always taking an online course and getting smarter. So that's something that you can do to make yourself more interesting. And then the last thing on my list, there's plenty more, was to read. Okay, read or listen, I should say. It's never been easier to read, particularly with Audible.com. Pretty inexpensively, you can get a subscription to Audible. And I would say if you listen to one book a month, and I don't even care what it is, if you listen to one book a month, you're going to be more interesting. You're going to have exposure to more ideas, more people, more kind of how-to stuff. And, when other people are going to be talking about, what's happening on, Game of Thrones, you're going to be talking to some other people about, what's going on in these, more advanced books that you're listening to. So I would say if you want to be more interesting, read more interesting stuff. And that is the one thing, and I've heard this over and over again, if you say, what is the one common characteristic of the world's most successful people as measured by, let's just say, financial success? The Jeff Bezos, Gates, Buffett, those kinds of people. They read all the time. And to hear them talk, they say, well, they think everyone else is like crazy. Why wouldn't you be reading? All these super smart people, the greatest philosophers in the world, the greatest business people, greatest bankers, they've written down all their findings and ideas from a lifetime into a book that's just this thick. So they're like, I can just get this information in my brain and I can't get it in fast enough. So 2 more things. One, this is a kind of an easy one, and maybe this can apply to you, maybe not. But I tell you another thing that makes you more interesting is being a chef, right? Like, let's say you start taking classes. You start taking classes to learn how to cook, Spanish food or to cook French food or American food, doesn't matter. But you're taking these classes, you're learning how to cook, and so you can have friends over, you can have partners over, whatever. You can have business people over, say, hey, Jacob's cooking a big fish tonight, or, whatever it is. So when you're saying, the baseline is job, likes a football team, goes to church on Sunday, and all of a sudden we're adding, and he studied to be a chef, and he speaks Spanish, and he just got back from Italy for 6 weeks, and he's going to play the guitar for us tonight. Okay? This is the baseline. This is where you're headed. You can be a lot more interesting, and you're going to be able to attract more interesting people in your life if you're like that. And then last thing, and this one again, it's easy and it's not easy, right? But the most successful people in the world, the Jeff Bezoses, the Buffetts, the Gates, Elon Musk, all those people, the one thing that's consistent across all of them is they'll read. They read voraciously. They're always reading a book. It could be a nonfiction book, or it could be a fiction book. It could be whatever's interesting to them at the time. But when I've heard them interviewed about it, they're like, well, of course we read. Like the smartest people in the world, the greatest philosophers, the greatest business people, the greatest politicians, they've all written everything they've learned into books. And we can read them for $20. Now, if we were starting over and saying, how much would it cost to have, Gates write down everything he knows in a book and we get to read it? How much would that be? It'd be a lot more than $20, right? People would pay thousands of dollars to kind of read what's in Gates's brain, but it's $20 you can read it, and most people don't. Most people don't read. I think his first book was The Road Ahead, he predicted a lot of things that were going to happen this century. But it's much easier to, scroll through, YouTube or Netflix or TikTok or whatever it is. I mean, I do some of that myself. But if you want to be successful and you want to be more interesting, spend more time reading books or listening to books. And again, take you back to the example, baseline, got a job, go to church, likes the football team. Baseline, not so interesting. And we're adding in, speaks another language, just got back from Italy, study to be a chef, plays an instrument, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Voracious reader, whatever. So I think it's a pretty simple answer. If you want to be more interesting, do more interesting things, add kind of skills to your life resume, and you can make it happen. And all those things are possible for you, I would say, in the next year or two. Every single thing I said you could do in 2 years. So go do it, and then check back in, tell me how it goes. We'll have an interesting conversation. Thank you.